Hi, my name is Shania Colton. I will be doing my presentation on the physiological effects of how-to training and endurance training. Altitude and endurance training. Altitude training is training in regions above sea level with a limited amount of oxygen. Endurance training is the training of the aerobic system, and it has a lot to do with our cardiovascular and muscular health. There are different types of altitudes. We have sea level, which is at the elevation of 0 to 500 meters, and we have the aerobic pressure at this point of 706 to 743. The PiO2, which is the partial pressure of inspired oxygen, and the level for that is 159 to 155 millimeters of mercury. The effects of that is normal. We have low altitude, which is from 500 to 2,000 meters, and the aerobic pressure of that is 743 to 604 millimeters of mercury, and the PiO2 is 155 to 126. It has minor impairments in performance, so there's little to no effects of what it do to the performance. Moderate altitude ranges from 2,000 to 3,000 meters. The aerobic pressure ranges from 604 to 537 millimeters of mercury. The PiO2 is 126 to 112. And at this altitude, illness do begin to appear. Acclimatizations are increasingly important at this point. So you just want to pay attention to your health and the changes that you see in your body at this point. Altitude range from 3,000 meters to 5,500, and the aerobic pressure at this point range from 537 to 394. The PiO2 range from 112 to 82. There's a considerable decline in performance at this point. Altitude illness and acclimatizations are clinically important. At extreme altitude, which is anything above 5,500 meters, you want to always have medical personnel around to watch you and make sure there's no extreme illnesses or sicknesses you're coming onto at this point, and the aerobic pressure at this point will be anything below 394 millimeters of mercury, and the PiO2 at this point is anything below 82. Prolonged exposure at this type of elevation could lead to death and also deterioration in different parts of the body. The different methods of training include classical altitude training, and the classical altitude training range from time frame range from 2 to 4 weeks, and it is anywhere between 1,800 meters and 3,000 meters, which is anywhere between a low altitude and a moderate altitude, and that's the most common method of training. The intermittent altitude exposure, that is a less efficient and effective way of training, and it is at a lower altitude. The chance of illness and mistraining is lower, but it's also not an effective way to train due to the fact that a lot of the improvements you do want to see or you may not see at this point or at this altitude. And then we have the live high, train high, which is living and training above 3,000 meters, and it could go all the way up to living and training at 5,000 meters. at all times, so that can be dangerous due to your health. The live high, train low, that's living at an altitude between 3,000 meters to 5,000 meters, and training can range from 500 meters to 2,000 meters. And a lot of people do use that method of training as well. This is a chart comparing the different methods of training. This first one is the live high, train high method, and it is the percentage of people using that method of training. And this is the live high, train low method. This is just comparing it, how many people use that method of training. The live high, train low intermediate level is how many people are using that method of training, and the live high, train low prolonged, which is really dangerous, is just going over the amount of time they prefer, like over the 4-week period of time. The positive effects of how to in endurance training, it increase your time to exhaustion when you're performing. It increased oxygen intake and delivery. Oxygen delivery is increased when the volume of red blood cells and hemoglobin are increased. It increased in, you will see an increase in the overall performance of the athlete, whereas they may not be as fast at sea level, but once they go to high altitude training, they and train for a period of time. Say they do a classical altitude training, and they go train for about 2 to 4 weeks, and they come back, they may be faster due to the fact that more oxygen is getting to their muscles now, so they're able to move better, move faster. Their oxygen intake is higher, so that they're able to breathe more at sea level, and get more oxygen into the body. At that point in time, you will see improvements in the erythropoietin and vascular epithelium growth factors. And that is what focus on the transporting and delivering of oxygen to the muscles. Negative effects of this method of training is possible illness, loss of lean body mass, loss of body weight, insomnia, loss of appetite. The different types of illnesses are mountain sickness, pulmonary edema, cardiac arrhythmias, detraining and immune system dysfunction. And I want to go back to the negative effects. As you can see, the chart up here is showing the blood cells and the systolic blood pressure. You can see how as the blood cells begin to get higher, the systolic pressure also begins to get higher, which can be very dangerous. And also the albumin levels, as those increase, the systolic pressure also increases. So that can cause problems, of course, with your health. So you want to be very careful of that. Also, the insomnia, that can come from the lack of oxygen your body is being able to bring in. So that person may not be able to sleep because they can barely breathe, or so they're not comfortable. So they're just rolling around in the bed at nighttime, and they're up. Also, illnesses can come upon you just due to the fact that you can't sleep, or you're losing the amount of sleep you normally have. And that can cause illnesses as well. The symptoms that show from these illnesses are headaches, loss of appetite, nausea, insomnia, peripheral edema, cerebral edema. And the peripheral and cerebral edema, those are the worst ones. You never want to experience those. You can be any age to do how-to training. In my studies, the ages vary from adolescents to young adults. But at the younger ages, of course, you want to be more careful. You want to always have someone there watching them, because you definitely don't know how kids and children's body are going to respond to the different ways of training, due to the fact that everything in their body hasn't fully developed. So it can be dangerous. Also, if you have any type of medical conditions, you want to be careful with doing how-to training. Just because you don't want to worsen those medical conditions. So say if you have high blood pressure, we saw in previous slides the systolic rate will increase throughout high altitude training. So therefore, you wouldn't want to come and do a high altitude training if you have high blood pressure. Things of that nature. You got to take that into consideration. So you want to seek medical attention before you decide you want to do high altitude training. This is showing comparing the heart rate and VO2 max as you continue to train. As the VO2 max increase, the heart rate will continue to increase. The blood lactate level will increase as the VO2 max increase, and you can see how there's a drastic change once you get to the VO2 max level around 50. The blood lactate seems to like it's a great improvement, and then the heart rate and the IEMG, that's just showing like over a certain period of time, the heart rate will begin to decrease and go back to normal, or possibly lower than normal. So you just want to be careful as a prolonged period of time. This is just a chart, graph showing the difference in classical altitude training and living high training low. Yeah, classical altitude training is one of the most common, but it is not. It can be the worst if you overdo it. If you go over that time frame of that 2 to 4 weeks, you can see a decline in the performance rather than the incline that you would see in the normal time frame. But going down here, you can see in live high, train low, you want to do that training a little longer, and you would see a gradual incline in the performance. So it's just with this one, your body may need a little more time to adjust to living high and training low, but you will see an improvement in the performance. My recommendations for if you are interested in how-to training, if an endurance performer wants to improve their performance, I do recommend how-to training. However, I recommend they do their own individual research on the effects of how-to training with endurance training, like based off of the things they like, the things they don't like. I do not recommend how-to training to adolescents. If a person have a history of immune deficiency, upper respiratory disease, and or eating disorder, I do not recommend how-to training for that individual. And these are my different references. You can go back and look at those if you like. And here are the other ones. And And this will conclude my presentation.